Hi, my name is John Smith. Welcome to Kingdom Real. And today we have part 2 with my friend, Reverend Dr. William Revely. So glad we're here, and we had so much time of fun on the first one. We're going to do another one.
Well, I'm just happy to serve you, John. I tell you,
Okay.
it's a great man. It's great being here.
Great having you here. So you shared with us about your family and ministry and all things that you were doing, what you've been through, some of the good things, some of the tougher things. And I just want to say your mom only had 14 years to invest in your life, but she really made a lasting difference.
She did, for sure. She was my best friend. And I remember the last time I saw her, and we were on the porch of our home, and she and my dad were going to some affair in West Virginia.
Okay.
And I said, you'll have a good time now, Mom. And she said, you have a good time and stay out of trouble. She was my girl, I tell you. And even today, like I said, she's a great part of everything that I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm grateful to God. God has managed to put into my life beautiful people.
Mm-hmm.
I talked about I.S. Waters, who was my pastor, who did my wedding. He ordained me, took me with him to Hampton. He recommended me to Howard.
Okay.
And recommended me to churches to join. Walter Fauntleroy, I met him
Yeah.
in Washington, D.C., and stuff just managed to happen. At Howard University, I met John Staggers, who was my sociology professor.
Okay.
And I was a sociology major.
Hmm.
I never even knew what sociology was. I never heard of sociology till I got to Howard, but then I learned so much. Met Leon Wright, who was my New Testament scholar, professor. And Dr. Wright was a great influence on me and so many others.
Hmm.
I thank God for Dr. Leon Sullivan, which I mentioned to you, who was chairman of the board at General Motors,
Okay.
and credited with stopping apartheid in South Africa.
Amazing.
I mean, he's the one that history gives him credit for that.
Hmm.
He started OIC of America and
OIC,
IFISH,
just so anyone doesn't know what that is.
Opportunities Industrialization Corporation, and they taught building trades to everybody who wanted and needed to learn,
Okay.
and got them licensed
Yeah.
plumbers and electricians and brick masons. And then he formed IFISH, International Foundation of Education and Self-Help.
Wow.
And he, the motto was a bridge that stretched from Africa to the United States, which was this bridge. And there were Africans coming from Africa across that bridge to America,
Wow.
and Americans going across that bridge to Africa.
Wow. Tell me more about that.
That was our theme and our motto, and that he was teaching that Africa had stuff that we needed to learn, and they needed to learn stuff from us.
Yeah.
And when that blossomed, everything would gel and be better for everybody.
Hmm.
That was the concept.
Wow.
And he had an African American summit every 2 years, and it would meet in some African country.
Okay.
The first one, I think, was in Senegal.
Hmm.
And later we met in Ghana.
Okay.
We met in Gambia. We met in Rwanda, Zimbabwe, South Africa.
Wow.
So I went to all 5 And the number 6 one was to be in Nigeria, and Dr. Sullivan passed away.
Oh, wow.
But
So you weren't able to make that trip then?
well, they went. I didn't want to go. I asked him not to have it because I didn't want to go to Nigeria. Was just, it's a strange place, you know. But there are more doctorates from Nigerians than any other country in Africa.
Wow.
They had education down pat, and they are credited with a lot of inventions.
Okay.
That's the electric car and a whole lot of the battery, all of this stuff. Nigerians are very bright people,
Wow.
and but I've heard of some pretty tough stuff happening in Nigeria, so
All right.
I didn't want to go. I've been there. I had that experience. That I've been to 17 countries in Africa.
Wow. That's
It's
amazing.
55, I think, now, and I've been to 17.
What are a few things that you learned in Africa that you could share with us?
Well, I learned that their worship was meaningful. It was like in the country, when I was go down to the country, everybody was going to church. But you get in the cities now, you know, you got people shooting marbles and playing ball and there on Sunday. And some people go to church, some people don't.
Okay.
But in Africa, everybody went to church, man. When I stood on Palm Sunday, it was Palm Sunday, and I saw an audience of 200,000 people
Oh my goodness.
in one place having church.
Wow.
The place was just jammed, a stadium. It was filled like it was a football game or baseball. Man, it was just, and they were there to worship, and they sang and they shouted, and I was,
They can dance pretty good too, can't
oh
they?
yeah, they could do it. So I learned that worship to them in Africa was serious, and I was able to preach in a number of churches in Africa. Was offered many titles, and I turned them all down because I was not going to do an injustice to a position.
Yeah, that's
And
wise.
I stayed, and then I was back and forth. And so I have an adopted son in Ghana who is a pastor in Tema,
Okay.
which is one of the cities in Ghana. And he became my son because at 7 years old, he asked his mama if I could be his daddy.
Oh wow.
His dad he died. His dad died. All of his other brothers were older, but he was a younger brother, so he
Okay.
didn't know much about the dad. But he had one sister, and all of the other brothers knew that, and everybody. So I was his dad. His mama told me I could adopt him.
Wow.
So the lawyer was getting the papers, and he was nearing age of 16. The lawyer was supposed to be getting the papers together, and he turned them in too late. His birthday came,
Oh no.
and we couldn't officially adopt him. But you can't tell Obed. Obed Obang is his name. Obed says, and he'll tell you, this is my daddy. And so I share in everything. He's now head of his father's church.
Wow.
He has 7 branches and it's called Spirit and Truth International. And he is the head of that church.
Wow.
And he considers me the bishop, you know.
Well, that's fantastic.
So I thank God. But so I learned what commitment is really about, because it takes commitment to serve God when you can't have no clean water.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when you don't eat like you're supposed to, you know, can't get medicine like you're supposed to.
Mhm.
But their commitment to each other, oh, it's just great.
They take relationships really seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I started dressing African. I took all of my suits, shirts and ties. I gave them away. I gave them away,
Yeah.
and I started wearing African clothes
Yeah, I like it.
every day of my life. I wear African, and it's my witness coming up here last night
Mhm.
at the airport. I had my kufi, and it was red, yellow, and green, the colors in it.
Hmm.
And this brother from Senegal, he and another friend from Africa, and they got to talking about my hat, and they said several African countries have these colors.
Okay.
So I wanted to give him the kufi,
Okay.
and he said no, and his other brother, buddy from Senegal, came over and said, no, you can't take that, you know. So if I had two, give him one, and
Oh, yeah.
it might have been okay, but
Yeah.
no. So I said, okay, but don't worry, I'll take the hat. I put it back on, and I got on the plane and came up here.
Wow.
So I have learned that commitment is something. Now, with the after pandemic hit, Holy Hope has not been in worship. But we do it online.
Okay.
And I've had my son from Africa to preach
Okay.
to our church. He preaches occasionally,
Mm-hmm.
and several of his brothers came who live in America now. They all came to me, stayed in my home,
Wow.
and I saw them to get Billy. His older than him, but he is a brother who is a master electrician,
Okay.
and he was number 2 man who ran the court system in Detroit. Now he runs the library system, takes care of all of the electrical stuff for the library system.
Yeah.
And so I have this family, an extended family,
Yeah.
and it's just a blessing to see how God can work and use us, and these brothers and sisters from Africa and from America. I have brought them together, and they sharing so much. And I think a year ago, I went to Africa and stayed 9 months.
Wow, that's a long time.
9 months. And
Were you in several different countries, or were you in one the whole time?
no, I was in I was in Ghana.
Oh, okay.
In Ghana,
Yeah.
and but I did a serious getting around, and we ended up going so many different places,
Wow.
all over Ghana, but even outside, went to Nigeria, Senegal. I was just so happy to know how Africans were reaching out to one another.
Yeah.
When I met Mugabe,
Mm-hmm.
I was so blessed to meet him. The gay rights movement wanted to come and have an annual meeting in Ghana. I mean, in his country, in Zimbabwe, and he said, "No, keep that garbage, that nasty filth out of my country. You stay in America. And he refused, and so they said, we're going to take him to the World Council, and he said, I don't care where you take it, you ain't coming here. So when I met him, I said to Mugabe, I said, sir, now tell your people that I ain't doing nothing to harm you, but I got to hug you. And I ran over to hug them, doctor. We embraced.
Oh, that's great.
And the people just around, they just clapped and clapped.
Yeah.
And I said, you did so much. He said, we have to stand for something.
Yeah.
He was a short man, but strong. We have to stand for something.
Yeah.
And so Mugabe was a great person in my life. So I see that these people that God has sent to fill in my life to make it what it is.
Yeah.
I'm stronger and I'm struggling. I told Carvel, and Carvel can tell you about our friend Prince Asiel. And when I told Carvel about Prince, he said he wanted to meet him.
Wow.
And Carvel had a chance to meet him and found out what a great brother he was.
Yeah.
When he was in the D.C. jail, Prince Asiel, he was facing 365 years in prison.
Oh my goodness.
And he was in the D.C. jail teaching class. The warden went to his class. The guards went to his class. And he was making such a uproar while he was awaiting trial that it was just amazing how things developed. Now, one of his members came to me and she said, we have a measles epidemic in the Kifa over in Damona.
Yeah.
She said, and we need help. Would you help us? I said, what can I do? She said, we need money, we need doctors, we need medicine.
Okay.
I said, sure. So I started raising money. And I raised enough money to send, and we stopped that epidemic in the Kifa.
Oh, wow.
And the children's lives were saved.
Thank you.
And Prince Asiel heard about it. He said, I got to meet him. And so she tried to get us together. And finally, they said the trial was going to get underway. Interesting. The judge in the case became his personal lawyer.
Oh, wow.
The prosecutor became his good friend. The prosecutor guy who was sentenced him for 365 years became his best friend.
Wow.
And the jury said, we find no fault in this man, and let him go.
Oh, praise the Lord.
And the first church he went to when he got out was my church. He came to my church, started the Universal Brotherhood and Sisterhood at Mount Gilead Baptist Church in Washington, D.C.
Fantastic.
So Prince Asiel was my friend. He unfortunately passed away earlier this year.
Okay.
And we were hoping that he could get well and we would join forces and do great things.
Oh, wow.
But, you know, God has done great things for which I am extremely happy to be a part of it.
Let me ask you one question about Ghana. I was there for 3 weeks back in 2013. And one of the highlights for me was the last day I was there before I had to fly back. And we went up to Cape Coast.
Cape Coast.
And actually, as we were there and we were traveling, I saw somebody walk by. I have a photo of it with a newspaper that Nelson Mandela had just passed away.
Oh, wow.
And so I've got a picture of that newspaper with his face on it,
Right,
and that greeting.
right.
And then I go to Cape Coast, and I forget what the other town, but the two places where the slave trade
Yeah.
happened. Have you been through those?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That was a really emotional experience for
See
me.
the door of no
I
return?
did. and the stories they told of the abuse that took place
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah.
And at night, I forget the guy in charge of it would have all the women come out, and he would choose which one he was going to rape that
That's
night,
right.
and all of it. Just absolutely horrible.
Terrible. Terrible.
And,
Terrible.
yeah. So.
In the story, when they said the people would go through that door of no return to get on the slave ship,
Yeah.
say many of them jumped in the water, so they'd be eaten up by the sharks.
Oh, to avoid.
To avoid coming, they'd
Oh, my
rather
goodness.
die. So it's just so many
So many horrible memories
oh
there.
God, yes. And then when they packed them in those slave ships,
Yeah.
they left. It was something.
Yeah.
But I had a little boy that I met in Cape Coast,
Mm-hmm.
and he also wanted me to adopt him, and he told me, he said, I want to ask my mama and my daddy if I can be your son. And I said, yeah, well, ask them. And he said, they said yes. His daddy was ill,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember he wrote, last thing I heard, he wrote me a letter.
Yeah.
He said, get the papers ready, whatever you have to do, and come and get me. He said at the bottom, he said, my daddy kicked the bucket, and I'm waiting on you to come and get me.
Oh my goodness.
Now, I lost track of that young man. I've not been able to
Find him.
find him, but, because I wanted to
Yeah.
do that, but it shows you how these relationships,
Yeah.
they go forth,
They matter.
and how God just makes a difference.
What have you found to be the most effective way to get African American pastors, African American Christians to have a desire to connect with people in Africa?
Well, the best thing for me has been to try to get some interaction, so
Yeah.
get them to,
Mm-hmm.
they got to know each other, got to feel
So that is based on a relationship,
that
rather than
relationship.
just.
That's right.
Right,
Not what
okay.
you heard, you got to experience it.
Mhm.
And because I've been able to do that, I've had the Africans to come over, the church to come over,
Yeah.
and Africans in my church,
Mm-hmm.
Billy and Amos, all of those brothers who are my sons,
Mm-hmm.
and I have they participated in our worship,
Yep.
and they demonstrate. I say, well, show Billy, how do they do the offering in Ghana? See, but they dance up to the basket.
Yeah.
Oh man,
This is joy time.
joy time.
Yeah.
And so I had him he come up and dance and he show him. And then my folks, they didn't know how, they couldn't do it, but they tried,
There you go.
But it was, it just,
Yeah.
so everybody kind of get a feel for
Mhm.
how great it is. But the worship in Ghana is,
Amazing.
and in Africa, period.
It is. I experienced it in a few African countries. It's better than any place I've been, I think.
Oh,
my
man,
goodness. Yeah.
it's great. It's great. But
You shared with me a little while ago that there's been many people that God's brought into your life that you learned from. One that you named, what was one thing you learned from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.?
Martin Luther King, his stick-to-itiveness.
Mm.
He was unafraid, unabashed. I mean, nothing was going to stop him. When he set out to do something, it was going to get done. And I picked that up from him. I sat at his feet, and when I was such a young, I was a youngster, but I remembered him so vividly. And whenever I was in his presence,
Yeah.
you just you didn't ask him nothing. You just soaked it up. He talked and you listened, and he had so much to say.
Mm.
So, but I got from him that you never give up. Don't give up. And I remember the basketball coach from down in North Carolina who had cancer. And he said, no, don't give up. Whatever you do, don't give up. Don't ever give up. And I think about him oft times. And I say to the young preachers and to the old preachers, you don't cave in. You got to stand for God and with God. And no matter what happens, just believe that God will make a way. And I can testify, sometimes up, sometimes down, but I'm always level to the ground and believing that it's going to be all right in the morning.
Amen.
In the morning, it's going to be all right.
It's going to be all right.
Yes, sir. Hold on.
Hold on.
To God's unchanging hand. That's the lesson that I would say to the young preachers and the old preachers. Get all you can get and give all you got. If you keep giving it, God will keep making it a way for you. The work that you've done, Brother John, is amazing. We wonder how can so many people be touched by the messages that you sent across the world. And you told me, you find somebody that's willing to send the message to the people they know.
That's right.
If I can get this number to you, and you say, well, I can, how many you need, I can do, and you send it to everybody. And that's what it's all about.
It is.
That's what we got to do, and I believe that it's going to be all right. As we join forces with your kingdom real, man, there's no telling what we're going to do.
Amen.
Who will stop us?
With Christ, all things are possible.
Yes,
Praise
sir.
the Lord.
Praise the Lord.
Love
Praise
you, brother.
Him. Love you too, John.
Thank you for being with us.
Good to be here.
All right.
Thank you much.
Well, I'm John Smith. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Kingdom Real. God bless you. See you real soon.